All right, good evening, everyone. We're back out of closed session, and welcome to the public session of our meeting of Tuesday, September 12th. And we will start with a report out from the city attorney on our closed session. I believe we have 2 items to report out.
Items 1A, 1D, and 1F were discussed. There's no reportable action on item 1A. On item 1D, this involves a plaintiff brought this action after suffering a significant hip injury falling from a standing position when the Big Blue bus made a sudden movement. We are recommending that the council approve settlement in the amount of $50,000.
Moved by McEwen, seconded by Davis. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember McKeown?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connor?
I'll abstain as I missed that.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes. So that passes 5-1 of the 6 of us present here. And city attorney, want to report out on one other item?
Yes, item 1F is the litigation Trevor versus City of Santa Monica. This action was brought after plaintiff Trevor fell from an unstrapped motorized scooter during a Big Blue bus collision. We are recommending that the council approve settlement in the amount of $54,000.
Second.
It's moved by Himmelrich, seconded by Davis. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember McKeown?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Abstain.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes, so that again passes 5-1 of the 6 of us present. And that will conclude the report from closed session. Could the clerk call item 2A, please?
Yes, item 2A is acknowledgement of Chief Seabrook's retirement. And you have one request to speak.
All right. I think we'll call the speaker first, and then we'll dive into the other stuff. So that's Alina Wilbro, is that correct? Welcome.
My name.
Oh, there's a yeah. There's no L there. What am I
It's
doing?
all right. It happens a lot. Don't worry about it. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight on behalf of State Senator Ben Allen in order to present Chief Seabrooks with a Senate resolution honoring her incredible service to the city of Santa Monica and the city of Inglewood. The senator would like to offer his sincere congratulations on your magnificent career and contributions to ensuring the safety of our citizens and city, and wish you a happy and very well-deserved retirement. So congratulations. Thank you.
Well, don't go anywhere, Chief. Come up here and accept your plaudits. I think at this point, no surprise that Chief Seabrooks is retiring. I have my own personal theory that after having attained the distinguished status of being awarded the Tony Vasquez Trophy for distinguished service in ballroom dancing, there was nowhere to go in her career but downhill. So she wisely chose to retire while she's at the top. So I will read a commendation that we have for you and then present it to you officially. And then anyone in the dais who would like to add their own thoughts about the incredible service Jack has provided to our city, I encourage you to do so. And as people know, it's usually my habit to skim through these whereases, but I'm going to read this one in its entirety because I think the occasion merits it. So it says, whereas Chief Jacqueline A. Seabrooks first joined the Santa Monica Police Department on November 17th, 1982, and was assigned serial number 2593. During the following 25 years, Chief Seabrooks had a variety of assignments that would eventually lead to many accomplishments within her distinguished career. They include background investigator, academy tactical instructor, patrol sergeant, operations adjutant, personnel and training sergeant, patrol lieutenant, special operations lieutenant, traffic services lieutenant, special enforcement captain, operations captain, criminal investigation captain, and a variety of collateral duties. And whereas Chief Seabrooks rose through the ranks and distinguished herself by becoming the first female sergeant, lieutenant, and captain to hold those ranks within the SMPD, and became an inspiration for many who would come after her. After a brief stint in another city, and in continuing with the theme of first, Chief Seabrooks was selected to be the 17th Chief of Police for the Santa Monica Police Department, and again, the first female to hold that position in the department's then 111-year history. And whereas Chief Seabrooks devoted her energy, skills, and leadership to further develop the Santa Monica Police Department and guided it to be the benchmark of excellence that all within law enforcement know it to be. During her 5 years as chief, she reorganized the department, completely updated the policy and procedures manual, helped procure countless pieces of equipment embracing cutting-edge technology, procured the department's first mobile command post, and rolled out a completely brand new communication systems. And whereas Chief Seabrooks was responsible for appropriately aligning the department along the principles of the 21st century policing guidelines, embrace contemporary and innovative thinking, increased opportunities for all personnel to develop themselves to their highest potential, developed and strengthened relationships within the community, business districts, and municipal government. Whereas Chief Seabrooks remained true to her chosen profession, law enforcement, and always found time to remain proficient in her operation abilities, respond to and assist field officers with calls for service, and provide sound advice and guidance during difficult times. And whereas Chief Seabrooks will be remembered for her common sense approach to matters, zero tolerance to any form of foolishness. Amen to that.
Still.
Her consistent professionalism, and as a leader who always remembered to laugh and enjoy her position. Now, therefore, I, Ted Winterer, Mayor of the City of Santa Monica, on behalf of the members of the City Council, do hereby take great pleasure in commending Jacqueline A. Seabrooks for her years of dedicated service and loyalty to the citizens of Santa Monica, and extend our very best wishes to her for a happy and rewarding retirement. And here is the official proclamation.
Makes it tough to hug you.
Don't go anywhere, Chief. I see a couple of my colleagues who would like to say a few words, starting with Councilmember McEwen.
Well, Chief, because of the professional, specific nature of our relationship, I don't know that I've ever before been able to just simply say, I like you, but I do. And there were a lot of things in the whereases, but there are two that I want to pick out for particular attention. Things that I really deeply appreciate that you have done for our community. One is the way in which you have pulled together our police department and really made a cohesive team. The history has had its ups and downs, but under your leadership, I've never seen this department come together like it has, and I think that is in great part due to your work. The other thing I want to acknowledge is what a tremendous role model you have been, and the difference that that has made that you and I may never even know for so many young people in this community who've seen you rise through the ranks to be the chief of police in this city. And I know that wasn't easy at times. So for those in particular, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Vasquez.
I would just ditto those comments, and actually what I would add is that I had the opportunity to meet you the first time. I think you were actually a motorcycle officer back in the 90s. I guess it was the early 90s. And my daughter at that time was, I think she was maybe 2-3 years old. She had the privilege of actually riding alongside you when they did the Bring Your Daughters to Work day back then. And to this day, she's just at awe when she saw, when I got back on the council, that, wait a minute, she's the chief now? She was just a cyclist. But so like Councilor McEwen was saying, you did have a lot of, especially on women that are thinking about this career. And I know since you've been on, we've grown quite a bit, not only in diversity of races, but also in gender. And I know a lot of it had to do with your leadership on that. But like I said to you before, I know you're leaving to Dallas, and I give you 2 years. You'll probably be back. But anyways, I wish you all the best, and thank you for the time and the experience that I had, at least to interact with you on a professional level, and then also just as a friend.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Well, Chief Seabrooks, Jackie, I can call you that now. I just want to thank you. I know that you have always been available anytime we've had questions or wanted to talk about issues in the city. I think that I certainly agree with Council Members McEwen and Vasquez that you've been a tremendous role model for all sorts of people in the city. And I think the idea that people can look at you and say there's somebody who started at the bottom and rose all the way to the top gives everybody the idea that that's exactly possible for everybody, and I think that's really key. But the thing I said this before that I'm going to miss the most is you are a fantastic dancer, and I expect to see you on Dancing in the Stars anytime. I think you were on the stage at National Night Out, and you started to dance. I think Councilmember Himmelrich and I had to slink into the background because we just couldn't keep up. That's right. We were the backup dancers doing the ooh-oohs. But in any event, I do want to say just how grateful I am for the leadership that you've shown while you've been here. You've gone through some tough times in this city, and you have always been the consummate professional, and you have always shown grace under fire. And I think more importantly, you've always had a ready smile, and I think that helps a lot. So thank you for all you've done for the city. Thank you for all you've done for the little girls and boys who are saying, hey, I want to be a police officer when I grow up. And thank you for dealing with what can be sometimes a difficult council. So thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Himmelrich.
Well, as the newest member of the council, and I keep getting to say that, right, I have to say that you had done most of the heavy lifting by the time I got here. So I had the benefit of just getting to talk to you about other things. So talking to you about sort of man, God, and the universe and home shows and how my prediction is not that you will be back here in 2 years, but that you'll be on the Dallas City Council. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. And I'm looking forward to staying in touch. And thank you so much for everything.
And Councilmember O'Connor.
Right, as people noted, what a role model you are, but you broke those glass ceilings, and that was not easy in the 1980s and the 1990s. So that shows, your leadership at every level, especially the leadership for people of color, for young women, and that, as noted by my fellow council members, really helps everyone achieve what they want in the world. So thank you for having the courage to break those glass ceilings and make it a better world. Good luck on your retirement.
Thank you.
Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share with us at this point, Chief?
I just wanted to say, Mayor, I've had an opportunity to say a lot of things, and we'll have a couple more opportunities before your departure. But I think it bears the context here of what an incredibly difficult job it is to be the police chief of the city of Santa Monica. Just in the last 2 days, we've had to evacuate the pier because of a credible bomb threat. You had to deploy forces after an industrial accident caused the blowout of power in a big portion of our city, and the day before had to deploy a major operation to protect the civil liberties of people in our community. That's a Sunday and a Monday in Santa Monica, and your grace under pressure is unique and extraordinary.
Well, hold on a minute. My executive officer's not here today, so I had to bring him myself. I'm most proud. I'm most proud of the men and women of the police department. They've done a phenomenal job, and because they have, you can say those nice things about me. But at the end of the day, it's those 460 some odd in the budget, the 412 or so that are actually working, who do the work day in and day out, that makes you proud and that allows us to stand as the benchmarks for excellence. And so for me, it was wonderful to come home and be the chief for 5 years. It made all of that ugliness in the early years worth it. And I am honored and privileged to have been your chief for the last 5 years. And all I can say is thank you.
All right, we will now take a quick detour into the mundane because I forgot to ask the clerk if she had wanted to ask the council members about any reports on travel before we jumped into that. So,
actually, I'll wait until after the 2 items.
Okay, then let's call 2B.
Okay, item 2B is update on the Office of Wellbeing, and you have 3 requests to speak. I'll bring you the other 2.
All right. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, and congratulations to the chief. It's really an honor to be here to send her off and to welcome our new city attorney. So thank you. I look forward to working with you. I'm Julie Rusk, and I'm here on behalf of your new team, which is the Office of Civic Wellbeing. And we're going to do a couple things tonight as we give you a little preview into some of what we've been learning about our community. We have some new findings that are coming out. We want to let you know a little bit about the use of these findings, what our team has been up to, and where we're headed. So as we're getting started here, we have these wonderful interns. We're part of the city program that really welcomes a cadre of young energy into City Hall. And Ben and Michelle, who are handing out these little notes for you, are part of those. So thank you to Ben and Michelle. So Lisa Parson, my colleague, and I are delighted to be here on behalf of our team. As I said, we'll share these things that we've been up to. And I think I wanted to just start with a little bit of a reminder, what you have in the cups we've handed out, or a leave behind report that provides more data than we'll be able to go over tonight about what our team has been doing and will be doing. And tonight we're going to do, as I said, a couple things. We're going to go through some of the data and talk with you about some of the highlights. But I thought it would be important to remind each other and ourselves about why we're doing this. The premise of what we're doing is pretty simple. We believe, and I know you believe because your policies really strive to achieve this, that if we understand the people in our community and we really pay attention to the distinctions, what makes them unique, what their strengths are, and what they're struggling with, we can make better investments, we can make better policy, we can establish more effective and stronger partnerships, because we know local government can't do it alone. And our city manager has really been at the forefront of local government innovation and reminding all of us and our colleagues throughout the city that really we will be most effective the more we partner with our communities. So the premise of this work is really all about that, using data, partnering with our community to make life better for all of us. And I would say particularly in 2017, it's more important than ever that we pay attention to the distinctions and those among us who are most vulnerable. So again, this is really an important part of what this work stands for and what I know our local government stands for. So what we'd like to start with is a little bit of a tee up of these findings and what we've learned, some of what's different from 2 years ago when we did this index and some of what we've learned now. So I'd like to bring up my colleague, Lisa Parson, to take you through that.
Thank you, tall Julie. Just a second. Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak about our work. I'm the project manager for the Wellbeing Index, and I'm very passionate about using data to inform decision making and making sure that we are including the perspective of residents in our decision making. And I think one of the strengths of the Wellbeing Index is its construction, because 1/3 of the index is made up of residents' opinions. We field a resident well-being survey, and in that becomes a primary source of data for when we develop our findings. The Wellbeing Index is made up primarily of the survey data from residents, city data from all of our departments that we can find, administrative data from any other sources that can fill in the portrait of what's going on in Santa Monica, be that private data, be that nonprofit data, school district data, census data, anything we can find. And then we also have begun leveraging social media data as a way to get a pulse on some of the issues that are going from, day-to-day shifts and changes in society. So the Wellbeing Index is really made up of this framework that you all are very familiar with. We've adapted it to use for the budget. We're using it for performance management in the city. Data, and then analysis. We have analysis partners who work at RAND and also at the New Economics Foundation to help us make sure that the findings that we're sharing with you today and the findings that we share with the community are really scientifically rigorous, that we're having the best minds we can find develop those and make sure that we're making sure that we're holding very high standards for this work that we're going to share with the community and with you. So the 2017 Wellbeing Index is what I'm here to talk to you about tonight, and I'm just going to share some preliminary findings. I wanted to let you know a little bit of what's different from the first year. The first thing was we learned that people really liked being asked the type of questions that we asked on the Wellbeing Survey because we doubled the response rate this year. The first year we had 22, or just under double. We had 2,200 responses, and this year we had 3,900 responses. And so that was really exciting to see that people were, after taking the survey the first time, coming back to take it again and clearly letting more people know about it and participating in the survey. We also, after hearing from community members bringing out the 2015 survey, did adjust the survey to try to get at some issues that weren't captured the first round. So we included some questions on gender identity. We added a question about sense of financial stability. And that question is really important because when researchers look at Santa Monica and look at a median income, they think everybody's doing fine, right? But that's not in context of how people are managing the whole portrait of their lives. You may make a lot of money, but you may also be spending a lot of money on childcare, rent, your mortgage, things like that. So understanding how people felt about their sense of financial stability was a very important question to add this year. We also wanted to add a question about family profile, so looking at the well-being of people with children in the home under the age of 18, because we know with shifting demographics, we're hearing a lot of change of people feeling like maybe families can't stay here, maybe they can, those type of questions. So we wanted to really look at that to see what we could learn to make that conversation more data-driven. And then we also looked at spiritual beliefs this year. We also expanded the analysis framework, so we have findings citywide, which is how we started, but then we also have findings by race, ethnicity, by gender, and again by that family profile. We're pushing the team at RAND to do a little bit more analysis for us still, so one of the things that we want to look at is well-being for people who report long-term illness or chronic health conditions in Santa Monica, and also well-being for people based on the time they've lived in Santa Monica, right? Because we may be seeing really different trends for people who just got here versus people who've been here for a long time. So we're asking them to look into that as we go into the fall. So let's just get a highlight of where we are. This is a pretty great slide to start with because we're seeing a lot of positive trends. So we're seeing trust in our neighborhood has gone up from the first survey. We're seeing sense of belonging has gone down just a little bit, and it's not really where we'd like it to be. But the remainder of these primarily have gone up. So planning on staying a resident of my neighborhood for a number of years, that has increased. People you can count on in your neighborhood, that has also increased. And then we have some markers for sense of community here that have decreased slightly, and those are things that we in the Wellbeing Office are really interested in seeing how we can shore up. So being able to stop and talk to people in your neighborhood or borrow things from your neighborhood seem like small, kind of like Mayberry-esque things, but they really hint at how strong that network is that you have in your local area. So we want to look further into that and see what can be done to build that network and make it a little stronger. We also continue to have a very high volunteer rate. The bottom rates are from 2015. So we were at 38% volunteers, and we're now at 34%. but we're still much higher than the US average, which is 25, and we're higher than the California average, which is 24. So we are really seeing a community that's engaged, that cares about Santa Monica, that wants to connect with each other. And then we also expanded the Wellbeing Framework this year to make sure that we captured some information about sustainability and brought that front and center. And so here you'll see that it's 67% of our new buildings are meeting the gold standard for LEED certification. And there's a goal to get to, by 2020, to have that be 100%, and we're well on our way to that. So that's really exciting to see as well. Some areas where we do see some room to work, and we're working on this in Santa Monica, so this is not news, but I think it's important to note the trend, is in 2015, 1 in 5 of our respondents was concerned about paying the rent or mortgage, and in 2017, we're now at 1 in 4. That's particularly strong for families and for Latino residents. We also, going back to that note, about 40% of Santa Monicans feeling they don't belong in their neighborhood from the earlier slide. That's one of the community measures that decreased slightly. That, again, is strong for the Latino community and also for residents who don't identify as male or female. On the survey, we have the option for male, female, gender fluid, or other. And so we see that there may be something there also to dig into to really get a better understanding of what's happening in those communities. It was also interesting to see the shift in transportation modes in Santa Monica. Since the first time we did this, we had no expo. So this year, the driving alone rate remarkably stayed the same, but the mix of how people are getting to work changed. So there are actually more people walking than in 2015. Obviously, the 6% of people taking the train is new. The bike rate went down slightly, and the bus rate stayed about the same. So it's interesting and it's exciting to be able to track this over time and see the impact of Expo and see how high those numbers are going to go and when we're going to make a dent in that driving alone number. And finally, this is something that we've been working on for a while, so I end here with a purpose. In 2015, we found that 1 in 4 Santa Monicans wasn't eating 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. I don't, so I wasn't that surprised by that. I try, but I don't always succeed. And this year we found that that number has decreased another 5%. This takes me really to why I am so passionate about the index and what can be done with it, because it speaks to a pilot that we started when we learned this in 2015. When we realized especially that this was happening in the 90404 area where we do have the Virginia Avenue Park Farmers Market, we pulled together some stakeholders from the community, from nonprofits, engaged residents, people from the city, and we just talked about the findings that we discovered for this community in this specific part of our city. And one of the things that came out of that discussion when we were trying to figure out why is this happening, we have this farmers market, it's so popular, right? I mean, these farmers markets are world award winning. What we found, the first thing was that we don't really track who's attending our farmers markets, right? So they may be very, very popular, but that doesn't mean they're being used as a neighborhood resource. That was something that came out in that conversation. The second was that the community members that were present really said a lot of people in this neighborhood don't feel like the farmers markets are for them. They feel like it's for other people. So we recognized that there was some work to do to get the message out that we want people of this community to go. So one of the things that we did was dig deeper into the associated data around the lower income residents of 90404 who may not be going to the farmers market and this statistic. What we found was of 12,000 people eligible for CalFresh benefits, only 3,000 people were signed up. We also know that at the farmers market, that farmers market is enrolled in Market Match, where you can actually double the value of your CalFresh benefits when you spend them in farmers markets. So we are making these efforts, right, to bring affordable, healthy fruits and vegetables to our residents, but here there's 9,000 people with dollars just sitting there going unspent because they don't know about it, they don't know about the program. So we reached out to the county, and they started staffing someone in Virginia Avenue Park to sign people up for benefits in person. The value of that was there was a concern that people were getting, daunted by the online process. This happens in cities everywhere, that the enrollment process for some of these great benefits is so it's either too complicated or you don't have access to strong enough internet for it not to fall out before you can complete the form or what have you. So we thought, let's bring a human touch to this and give people the opportunity to have a conversation with a person in Virginia Avenue Park and get enrolled that way. The second thing that we did was the Hospitality Tourism Academy was already canvassing the area for needs assessment to figure out what type of trainings people need. So we already had people going door to door in the community. So we asked them to please let people know this service is now available in the park. You can go to the park and sign up for CalFresh benefits. You can double the value of those benefits if you spend them at the farmer's market. And then the farmer's market really stepped up with some programming to bring people to the park. So they offered cooking demonstrations. They went to some of the local churches and talked there about what's available at the farmer's market. And so from this one small finding, which is why I like this one small finding about eating 5 fruits and vegetables a day, we really identified some resources that were sitting on the table. It didn't really cost us anything to do this, right? It was really just taking a different look at what we were doing and thinking about a different approach. And so that's what we really hope to build on and have many, many more examples of going forward as the Office of Civic Wellbeing. And with that, I will turn it back over to Julie.
Thank you for an excellent presentation.
And we are happy to answer questions as well about this data. So just a few more things to summarize. So back to why we exist. So we have this great tool and this information, and we all know that information and data that is only as good as what you do with it. So we're really working on a whole range of strategies to bring what is really now a growing field of innovation within local government, but really with a focus on driving that innovation towards community well-being. And I think this is really important because one of the things that we find when we talk to colleagues in other communities is there are lots of amazing innovation programs out there. They are not necessarily oriented towards really understanding and driving action on what matters most, which is our people. Oftentimes they're working on other very important issues like the efficiency of government systems, which we know matter as well. But we really are kind of unique in that we're applying some of the very tools and practices of innovation, which include using data, working around collective impact. These are concepts that you're all familiar with. And I think most importantly is this fourth bullet here that I want to take a minute to speak about, which is really what does it mean to co-create solutions for social impact? That sounds like a lot of fancy words and rhetoric, but I want to really break that down for a minute. And I really want to draw your attention to the work that you directed the city staff to take in partnership with our community just this year, and that was around the immigration issues. And you've all been very involved in this, and it's something we care deeply about because we really understand that some of the most vulnerable folks of our community are those who don't have documentation to be here. And yet we also know these are folks in our community who are working in our restaurants, they're going to school. I myself, as the parent of 2 kids who went through the Edison Language Academy in Santa Monica, which is a wonderful opportunity for all children to be bilingual and biliterate, benefited from these relationships. And yet we're finding that these are some of the folks in our community who are most vulnerable, as you well know, and we all know. So the idea of co-creating solutions is when instead of doing what we often do, which is very well intentioned, to really step up and offer a new program or a workshop or an initiative, we, and when I say we, this is an extremely interdepartmental effort. The staff on the ground at Virginia Avenue Park and Community and Cultural Services, the Human Services Division, do this work day in and day out. Those staff from the attorney's office, staff from our public library, have all really been working to partner with some of these parent groups that have become very active and effective in our community around what do they want to see. So as many of you know, we kicked off on the immigration issues with a really important workshop. The police department has been front and center in this work. I think that's an important point to make as we're transitioning and saying goodbye to our police chief. She was really out there in front on this issue. But most importantly, we all did good work and were well-intentioned. We were really listening and working with the folks at the park who were most affected. And they told us some really important things. They said, we want to do this with you. And so the example that I keep giving is it's about who holds the microphone. And in fact, the leaders of the community, many of whom themselves are undocumented, are running these workshops. And what we're doing as staff is we're providing resources and partnership to help make sure that There are emergency backpacks that people have, that the Mexican consulate came out and did an amazing series of workshops, that the organization that Councilmember Hemmelrich works with, Western Center on Law and Poverty, helped out, Legal Services Foundation. So we sort of work to create the resources that are in response to what people say they need. So, I mean, it's pretty simple, but that's what co-created solutions for social impact is about. And I think one of the things we're all working to learn to get better at in city governance is how to do more of that. So we hope that we can be part of the catalyst for that and bring some new ideas to bear there. So moving on to some of the other specifics, Lisa mentioned the framework for well-being is really, I think, come along to really say we want to partner with our colleagues in the Office of Sustainability and the Environment. This city and community has long known about environment, social justice, and economy, or this three-legged stool, and we really think that the work we're doing with well-being can help elevate that. So the budget now has this framework that talks about our sustainable city of well-being to help organize the things we're doing. Samostat, as you know, is our performance management system, and we hope that this data from well-being will help provide some outcome framing, which will assist as we advance our strategic goals, which are really aligned with the themes we're talking about. And then the last thing I want to point out here is a new initiative that we're a part of. At the start of 2017, we were invited along with cities in the region to become part of a year-long process called GARE, or the Government Alliance for Race and Equity. And again, this is extremely timely, but the premise is pretty simple. Government needs to up its act when it comes to dealing with race and equity issues. So Santa Monica, along with Long Beach, LA County, and several other cities, and cities across the country, so this is really a movement, are all really going through training so that we start to have a sort of vocabulary, we develop a toolkit, and ultimately we have a new way of looking at and engaging around race and equity issues. So we're at the beginning of this process, but we think it's really important and it's really central for civic well-being. So part of this that I want to just take a minute to walk you through is, as you recall, we started this when we were one of 5 cities to win Bloomberg Philanthropies Mayor's Challenge. So what that meant is the folks at Bloomberg are really interested in sharing and replication. So part of our work is also focused externally, out into the rest of the country and in some cases the world. And so we spend a little bit of time really we get a lot of calls from other cities and other organizations, I will say. Sometimes that becomes something that we're really trying to juggle. But we've heard from 34 different cities and well over 60 organizations. Specifically this year, however, I wanted to be sure you knew about a convening that we co-produced in New York with Bloomberg Philanthropies and RAND, where 14 cities who were most interested and ready to adopt some or all of the work that we're doing in their own way, in their own context, were brought together. So Miami, who we haven't heard from this week, but we've been in pretty continual contact with. They're looking to use our survey. Their public health department, I think, we're going to learn from them as much as they'll learn from us as we sort of move forward in working with them. Louisville, which has been really one of the cities, I think, for those of you who are going to conferences know that Louisville's doing all sorts of innovative work. We had a team from Louisville out in Santa Monica to visit us, and we're doing some sharing. They're using our framework in some really interesting ways. Charlotte and Durham are examples. We've heard from several international cities. We're talking to folks in New Zealand, The Hague, Amsterdam. So that's exciting too, and I think affirming that we're onto something. We've had, just in the last couple months, we've had 13 cities download our well-being survey with a fielding guide that we have to help people use it. So the point of this is to make it open source and useful. And then finally, I wanted to draw your attention to some of the other recognition. And again, I want to underscore, this is recognition for the work you all and we all are doing we have the privilege, really, of getting to share this with other people and sort of tell Santa Monica's stories. And I think Robert Wood Johnson really exemplifies this, why we won this Culture of Health Prize. We essentially, Libby Carlson on our team did a beautiful job of really writing a narrative that we keep saying we've got to figure out how to use it, that really talked about the history, at least how we put it together, of decades of policies that really stand this community in a great opportunity to do things for people. So here are a few examples, and we wanted to be sure you knew about those. And finally, we've had several folks reach out to us that want to partner. So we wanted to just highlight a few of these. Kaiser Permanente, who will be a sponsor with us as we release the index later this week, has reached out and has co-produced a series of videos for us that we will be releasing again later this week, which will really geared towards helping the concept of well-being really land with individuals. So what does it mean? What can you do? What are the resources in your community? So those videos will be rolling out. We have an exciting partnership with Fitbit, which will help us really target some of the neighborhoods, particularly the 90404 zip, around getting people active. And we're one of the first cities they've worked with to use their product in a way that's really about the public benefit. So that's exciting. You'll hear more on that. And then Sidewalk Labs is reached out to us to work on helping us with mobility issues. So finally, there's a list of great things we have on the horizon. Again, some of these are written up in the document we left you with. The Fitbit pilot, we plan to really develop a number of engagement opportunities around some of the themes and issues that are surfaced through the index. We have a great opportunity to join Cities of Service, which is really a network to really increase volunteerism. One of the things we're really hearing everywhere we go is how important it is to find ways to channel people's interests in contributing to their community. We're looking at a micro-grant process to sort of stimulate some little prizes for people as they do things like community gardens in their front yards and tiny libraries and things like that. We're looking to make block parties easier and some of those kinds of things. We mentioned immigration, and then finally we have a replication playbook that'll be coming out in about a month. So with that, we'd like to take a minute for any questions if you have them, and let you know we really appreciate your support, and thank you.
Thank you for, excuse me, a comprehensive report. I believe Councilmember Himmelrich has a question or two, perhaps.
Yeah, so these questions, and I'll hold my comments, my general comments for the rest, but I have a few questions about what I saw in the report and what it meant. So I saw health status and time in Santa Monica coming soon. What does that mean?
Oh, that's a great question. That's really about getting more disaggregated data. So in the survey, you may remember we asked how long you've lived in Santa Monica. And so one of the things the researchers can do with this kind of data is disaggregate it. And we're just, what we've done is we've decided to share some of our findings, and we have more sort of deeper level analysis that we will be getting from RAND.
So when you say disaggregate, you mean correlate it to other aspects of data?
So that we'll know a little bit more about the differences between people who've lived here a long time and people who haven't. That's an example.
So this is something that I may be the only one who has this question, but maybe not. So you said, so there was a discussion about neighborhood trust and the numbers going up and down, and the fact that the number of people who took the survey doubled. So my question is, how do we know when we double the number of people taking the survey that the variations aren't simply the result of having more people take the survey?
That's a great question. You know, I hope I can say this in a really non-research oriented way. I'm not a researcher. If I don't get it right, Lisa will explain. But really, the idea is when you've doubled the numbers, the last time we did it, the RAND weighted all of the data based on our demographic profile. So it just meant we had more people telling us. Instead of having to rely on sampling, we got sort of a richer volume, if you will. So it wasn't that we think the data was any less accurate. I suppose if you get 100%, you're always more accurate than when you're pulling from a sample, but it just meant we heard from people. You know, when we do our telephone surveys, the researchers will tell you if you do 500 people in Santa Monica, you can get a good cross-section. So it's that kind of thing. You're always sampling, and this time we got closer to 4,000, which we thought was really great. So we just think we had that much more data to draw from.
So I guess it was, and maybe I'm wrong, it was my impression that people both volunteered information and there were calls. So how do we know there was no duplication of data?
No. Yeah, we didn't, so let me just clarify. This was a completely online survey, completely voluntary. In addition, in order to reach groups that we may have had trouble reaching, we did a few extra pushes. So we made some paper surveys available. We had surveys in English and Spanish. So we sort of made an effort to reach out and into groups that may not be as that we had concerns about online. We worked through the senior center to reach seniors. So there were a variety of other strategies to really sort of buttress our outreach so that we could get that good cross-section.
But is there a way to know that, for instance, the same person hasn't submitted 10 times?
You know, there is with the online feature, and that's part of, I don't have the technical answer, and maybe Lisa, do you want to add something on this? Because Sue, I know that you like to drill down on these things, and I want to get you the answer that would help.
What I can say is we do filter out by IP address. So, and the survey takes about 15 to 20 minutes to do. So it's unlikely that anyone would take it 2 times and spend 20 minutes doing that. And if they did, they would have to do it from 2 separate IP addresses. Beyond that, you know, there's only so much you can control with the survey. And it is a good question, and we grapple with this all the time, right? Like, I feel like there's a potential that people felt like they trusted people more because it was close to the 2016 election. We're a very blue area. Maybe we were all feeling like we had something in common around the time that we did the survey. There's always going to be kind of confounding factors, but what we do have is a really rigorous research team who's going to try to clear out any of that noise and make sure that what we have is rigorous and true.
Thank you. So I may need both of you for this next one. Well, I do have one quick one. Transportation to work. You didn't have carpool on that list, was it?
Carpool didn't make, I think Get a Ride was on there, which
Yeah.
was the version for carpool.
Okay. And so on the CalFresh, this is something that, as Julie knows, I've been working on this for like 4 years. And we gave the hospitality group
Academy?
money to bring them to bring the benefits to Virginia Avenue Park, and I wonder. I mean, it sounds like it was somewhat successful, but not completely successful.
Mm-hmm.
That we aren't really doing the outreach necessary to bring people in to apply.
Okay, I'd like to sort of speak to that. As far as the last I've heard, those appointments are full every Tuesday. So it's not that we aren't signing people up. There is really, you know, I think there's an active, engaged process there. There's a lot of partners at Virginia Park, as you know, who are there on site providing all kinds of services. So the county, who's there to sign people up for SNAP or food stamp benefits, is there on Tuesdays, and I think they're pretty full, and it's an active, engaged process. We always have more to do. Look at that gap of 6,000 is a big one to. So
and I have some ideas about that, just so you know, but about ways to do it without having the county come. But thank you.
I just wanted to add, we do have a full data report on that project. I'd be happy to share it with you.
Good, thank you very much.
All right.
Wait, I'm sorry, one more. The gender identity, you know, we got letters about gender identity. This is a big focus for us at Western Center as well. It's a big focus in the community, and it's a really important issue. So I understand that in this particular survey, we had the one question. My question to you is, and we can't redo that, the existing per se, but on a going forward basis, are we committed to asking the questions?
We have 100% committing to do that as of August 2016.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, I think it's time, seeing no one else in the queue up here, to turn to the public input. And we have 3 speakers. First will be Sean Landris. followed by Yesenia Mansour and Alvin Gillitz. The speakers could line up against that far wall and be ready to speak. That'd be great. Welcome, Mr. Landers.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First, I'm here because I've been here before as a supporter of the Wellbeing Project, and I'm here tonight again as a supporter of the Wellbeing Project. I can't underestimate how important this work is. Julie made some comments earlier about the work that government innovation commissions and efficiency commissions are pursuing, and I have some experience with that as well. And I can say that even those kinds of commissions are turning to questions of design, co-creation, and making changes in the way government operates to enrich people's lives and advance individuals' dignity and well-being. The challenge is that sometimes the word well-being can sound, as one of my fellow commissioners on the Social Services Commission put it last year, like Santa Monica wants to send me to a spa. But the truth is that no matter who we are, we all have the right to a life with well-being. And so I hope that, of course, with my fellow commission chairs who signed the letter that Council Member Himmelrich mentioned, I do hope that future resident surveys will include questions about lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender sexual orientation, as well as gender fluid identity, because they are different. But I hope that this is a beginning, not an end. You've seen in the ways that different commissions have taken up this work, the way that different city offices have taken up this work. What I would ask of council is that you continue to ask questions that require the Wellbeing Project for your answers. That's how we're going to change the culture. Our city manager has led with creating a chief performance officer, chief data officer, but what will continue, as Clifford Geertz put it, is the precision with which we vex each other, and that way our city will become ever more fortunate and happy and well.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to be here. I'm here representing Kaiser Permanente. I know I've often here representing the chamber, but I did have a day job that entire time, so I'm here representing that now. And I'm here to talk a little bit about Kaiser Permanente and our collaboration, our connection with a Wellbeing Index. It was probably a couple years ago when I was perusing through social media and I saw the article about the $1 million grant that Santa Monica had received. And I think, probably like many other, I was like, really $1 million to study well-being in Santa Monica? You know, it kind of came to me in particular because part of my area includes South LA, and I would think that would probably be more appropriate for an area like that. But it really caught my attention, and I was probably part of the few people that went on the website and started reading the report and getting into the details. And the timing was perfect because it's when Kaiser Permanente was looking to enter the Santa Monica market. And I tried to see where we could connect, where there's a place where we could better align our offerings, but also how we contribute to the nonprofit community here in Santa Monica. And also it was at a time when we were better connecting with upstream determinants of health. We know you go into your clinic once a year, twice a year, so the ability to affect well-being inside the clinic walls is very limited. We have to create well-being in homes and communities. And so in perusing through this, we saw the importance of connecting with economic security, with education. What really stood out to us was the high levels of stress. So that's when we knew we needed to open our Santa Monica behavioral health offices that just opened a few months ago. And also we had to make the connections. So we tell one of our patients, you know, take this medication, try not to get stressed out, but they can't afford the medication. They can't afford buying fruits and vegetables at expensive farmers markets or at expensive grocery stores. If they can't afford the rent, they're going to be stressed. So anyway, we invite you to come to the launch event tomorrow. We're launching Wellbeing 365, Stress Less and Thrive. It's a wonderful series, and we've been very pleased to partner with the Office of Civic Wellbeing, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. We'll wrap up with Mr. Gillitz.
Good evening, Mayor Winter, council members. Just wanted to come and lend my support to this initiative. I've been a staunch supporter of it since its inception, and believe that a continued focus on the benefits of studying and promoting well-being in Santa Monica is consistent with our values as a community and will lead to an increase in the quality of life for all who live in, work in, and visit Santa Monica. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but from the perspective of being a Recreation and Parks Commissioner, I do believe that our parks are at the forefront of all aspects of well-being. They promote health and exercise, community building, stress relief, experiencing nature, and many, many more benefits. And there was no better display of this than this past weekend at Reed Park for the Bi-Level Health and Fitness Expo, which was really a successful event and a true showpiece of well-being. And also as a member of the Santa Monica Travel and Tourism Board, I now look at everything through the lenses of well-being, and wearing that hat, I look at how a healthy tourist industry helps to really facilitate a lot of the programs that lead to well-being for those of us who live here. From time to time, I meet up with Julie and her team, and we discuss how things are going with this, and I'm always curious to hear about the progress they're making. And last time we spoke, we talked about coming up with a definition of well-being for Santa Monica. I truly believe that's on the horizon as we dive deeper into this research and learn more about ourselves through this. But in the meantime, I've come up with some of my own definitions and aspects of life here that I think really do promote well-being. I'd like to share a few of those with you. One are block parties. Now, Julie mentioned that in her presentation, and from what I understand, we were making moves to simplify that permitting process. We do have a fair amount of block parties in our R1 neighborhoods, but we could have a lot more if the process were a lot easier. I'd also like to see an increase in block parties in our non-R1 neighborhoods. And hopefully with these changes, we will be able to promote that and really get the word out that this is a fun thing to do and it doesn't have to be precipitated by a headache or two. Oh, all right, I have a lot more, but I guess I mailed you all these points earlier, so hopefully check your email.
All right, we will check our email. I think the city manager confirmed that we're very shortly, towards the end of this month, going to roll out a much improved tool for people getting block party permits, which is opposed to running all over the city to different departments, getting what signatures. You can do one-stop shopping, isn't that correct?
It is, and it's an example of trying to be more responsive to concerns we have in the community. We hear a lot of good suggestions. Prioritizing them is always a challenge, but this is one that we'd heard a number of times, and so we're working to make it very easy for neighbors to get together and enjoy each other's company, get to know each other, and potentially learn more about things like Neighborhood Watch, emergency preparedness, all kinds of other positive things that can help improve the well-being and the resilience of our community.
We've made government more efficient. It's always desirable. Councilmember McEwen's in the queue, but actually I just got one late chat. All right, we'll hear Irma Carranza for 1 minute. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Sorry I'm late. We were having open house at Virginia Avenue Park, and it's a very lively space right now with families and the city's nonprofits, so which is all around the well-being. I want to thank Julie and her staff and the Human Services Division staff on really looking at things and how to work with community and city and community relationships around the well-being lens. I remember a few years ago I went to Denmark for work, and I was telling a friend of mine who they're in their 80s, and he told me, "Oh, why are you going to Denmark? You know, you went there in the 70s, and they had the highest rates of suicide." And I said, "Well, when I got off the plane, the first thing I saw, it says, 'Welcome to the happiest place on earth.'" Something happened there, right, that shifted things. And you know how it happened? Around this well-being lens. So other countries, other cities are doing this, have been doing this for years, and it works. Let's keep on doing it here. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Councilmember McEwen, you have the floor.
Well, what happened in Denmark was social democracy, but I'll leave that for another night. When Julie Rusk introduced the concept of co-created solutions, she almost apologized for it sounding like some kind of, woo-woo bureaucratese. But that makes all the sense in the world to me. And co-created means that, the city of Santa Monica is not going to do it all for us. We're going to do it for ourselves. And I'll give a specific example. On the 21st, next Thursday night, we have a city-sponsored project called Hack the Beach that'll be doing its pitch night. And this is not the city doing it. This is innovators and entrepreneurs in the city in the technical field coming up with ideas to solve problems in the community. Well, I'm somebody who likes to fix things, okay? And I often find that before I can fix something, I have to make a trip to the hardware store to buy the tool that I need to fix whatever it is I'm fixing. And I saw in the survey that we are particularly low in people borrowing things from each other in the neighborhood. Now, if I were doing a pitch at Hack the Beach Pitch Night next Thursday night, and I had an idea for a program that would let people register what tools they have and share them with people, that might be a very interesting co-created solution. So I really want to encourage us all, not just those of us on the dais who represent the city or our city staff, but community members who are watching this and listening to this, to think about ways that we can help with the well-being of this community, because really it's an area where we all have a role, and we have tremendous creativity in this city. And if we put that creativity to making life better for each and every one of us, I think we will be happy people in a happy city.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Well, actually, that segues nicely into what I was about to say, Councilmember McEwen, because I think that there was a attitude when we first started out in this work, and it really started out with the Youth Wellbeing Report Card and goes back even farther than that, that we were talking about how happy were people and how is the city going to make people happier. And I think what's happened since this work's really begun in earnest, and obviously with the Bloomberg Grant and other resources we've done and the hard work of Ms. Rusk and her group of people and people in other departments, I think one of the key things about Ms. Rusk's position is that she breaks through the silos, and that was one of the reasons I really supported creation of that position, is that people now understand that we're not talking about, do you wake up every morning and go, gosh, I sure am happy, but you wake up every morning and you're not stressed about how am I going to pay my rent, how am I going to feed my family, am I getting enough exercise, am I gainfully employed, and is the work I'm doing satisfying or meaningful to me? And I think that the fact that we've made that sort of mental transition from sort of poo-pooing this as sort of funny social science to something that people can really understand has a daily impact on their lives and can make their lives better, not just in sort of the mental way of, gee, do I feel good, but that by reducing stress and encouraging the eating of more vegetables and more outdoor activity, that it also has an effect on their bodies, on their physical well-being, and then on their familial well-being, and then, of course, on the community well-being. So I just want to thank you for all that hard work. I know it's been a bit of a tough slog. We haven't always been the easiest audience, but I think that you have not only broken down barriers amongst and between the various departments in the cities, but some of those normal barriers that come up when people hear about this work if they're not really familiar with it. So I just wanted to say thanks for all the good work.
Councilmember O'Connor.
Right, and one thing that when Councilmember Davis was talking triggered it, and it's about building resilience in people. We're not just building resilience in our physical infrastructure environment, but in people, because you might wake up someday and find out that the job you had is gone for some reason. And instead of being panicked, you would know that you have the resources around and the network around to help you as you face that challenge in life, because there will always be challenges. And again, building that both social and network as well as the network of services and information, and having the confidence knowing that there are people who will help you and that there are sources of information and places you can go to get the kinds of things you need when you're faced with whatever challenge in life. That's what community building is about, and that's what I see the Well-Being Index and the Well-Being Framework supporting and creating.
All right. Well, nobody else in the queue, so thank you so much for your report and all your hard work on this very important matter and the way it's intertwined in all of our departments and throughout the community. So keep it up. Thank you. And we'll now move on to the consent calendar. The clerk could call that, please. Oh, no, you want to do your travel update. Sorry, I was just going to blow that off entirely.
That's okay. Are there any council members who have anything to report on travel since the last meeting?
Councilmember Vasquez is in the queue, and then Councilmember O'Connor.
Yes, actually, since the last meeting, I guess it's been about a month, the week right after I attended the National League of Cities board retreat for Hilo. I'm a board member of Hilo, one of the caucuses within the National League of Cities. And it was actually held in Phoenix. And as a result of that, one of the activities that they took us on, they actually had a bus tour that took us from Phoenix down to the border in Nogales. We were able to cross and visit both sides of the border, both on Nogales, Arizona and Nogales, Mexico. And actually listening to the presentation of the well-being kind of reminds me of something that maybe needs to happen down, especially in those border towns. Because one of our visits was with the maquiladoras, these huge industrial complexes that they have on the border. And I guess part of NAFTA, and I guess I'm sure many of us were engaged in this a few years back, and I always had a very negative view of what NAFTA was really all about. But actually visiting some of these huge plants that they have there now, while it's, I guess one could argue that in some cases they're not paying the workers probably what they deserve, but in comparison to the lifestyle of some of those border towns, it's actually had a huge impact in some of those communities. And listening to the presentation on well-being, it'd be interesting to see if, what the well-being of some of these families, the impact this has had on them now, because it's been enacted, I think it's going on about 15 years now since this was passed. And actually, as a result of that, being a participant and having some dialogue and interactions with the mayors there, I was invited 2 weeks after that to participate in a conference that actually was held in Nogales, not Nogales, but Hidalgo, just outside of Mexico City, that was hosted by an international environmental group that was formed in Brazil about 10 years ago. And they held it in Mexico this was about a little over a week ago. And the folks, and I was asked to represent National League of Cities at that one, and the neat thing about it on the financial end is they actually took care of all the travel costs. So I didn't have to plunge into my travel on that one. So that was kind of a nice thing. But at the end of the day, I think just the interchange was very positive. Although when you go to some of these towns, especially cities outside of the U.S., the first thing everybody asks is, one, how we're surviving the whole Trump administration. Here it was a conference on sustainability, and the interviews I participated in with the news was all about, how you folks surviving with the Trump administration. And the other issue that came up with many of these cities, especially the local mayors, they all want to be sister cities to Santa Monica, which, I know is, we're very generous with our 3 sister cities. So I think they all would love to be a partner with us. So that's one of the challenges we have as we go out and about. But that's it for me.
Councilmember O'Connor.
It's turned on. In mid-August, I went to Burlington, Vermont, and participated in the Mayor's Innovation Project. It was hosted by the City of Burlington and held in their City Hall, which is a really nice, older historic building, much older than our buildings here in California. Topics covered included a municipal response to the opiate epidemic, land use and inequality. There was also a session on how cities are faring under the current federal administration, as well as our police chief was here earlier. 21st century policing topic was covered in Net Zero Cities. There's also a innovation showcase where mayors and council members from various cities will come up and do a 2-minute pitch and story about the kinds of things they're doing. And what was one of the nice things, there were participants from all over the country, but also from our city here, another one of our West Side cities, Councilmember Thomas Small was there from Culver City. So that was really good to spend some time with him also. Then last week I went to Washington, D.C., and I participated with 2 groups. On one day, I was with the California Transit Association. And the Transit Association, we had probably about 14 people representing transit agencies from across the state. We broke up into two groups, the Northern California group, Southern California group. The Southern California representatives included representatives from Orange County Transportation Association Authority, Los Angeles County Metro, Antelope Valley Transit Authority, the San Diego Municipal, they call Metropolitan Transit District, Foothill Transit, and the staff from California Transit Association. I was there representing the Big Blue Bus. And we spent Wednesday, we were on the Hill and we were on the House side and had a full day of walking to offices of representatives, not just in California, but targeted ones to promote the continued funding for transportation. Public transportation creates jobs across America was one of the themes, and there are these really wonderful handouts I had of buses to show not just what is being done in California, because the electric bus companies like Proterra, BYD are creating factories and manufacturing plants here in California, but also how the parts are created and built all over throughout the United States. So that investment in public transportation is also an investment in jobs. Another thing we talked about too with the alternative fuel tax credit, how that needs to be continued to be provided in any federal transportation infrastructure package and federal action. Then the next day, I shifted over on Thursday to the National League of Cities. And with the National League of Cities, we had probably about 30 folks from around the country. We broke into smaller groups, and on that day, I was with them as we visited on the Senate side of the Hill, a number of offices throughout the day. The messages there that we were talking to members of Congress about and senators were continuing community block grants, how important they are to cities. The Tiger grants, again, that's tied to public transportation, talking about workforce development and education programs and energy efficiency. And other things that are a little are important, but not necessarily on the front burner in terms of the average citizen, is that the need to protect municipal bonds, that the federal income tax exemption on municipal bonds remains, because municipal bonds are a way that cities, large and small, are able to build their infrastructure. And also talked about driving America's economy forward again by investing in the municipal infrastructure, that most of which cities build and support. So we had a full day there, on 2 full days on the Hill, one with the California Transit Association and one with the National League of Cities.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to the consent calendar. If the clerk could call that, please.
The consent calendar. All items will be considered and approved in one motion unless removed by a council member for discussion, and you have 4 requests to speak. And before we go any further, I wanted to mention that item 3E, the staff has requested that item be pulled from the agenda.
And then also, I guess we should note that item 3L is we're appropriating funds which require 5 votes, and we'll also be passing a resolution. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
All right. We have a number of requests to speak. We'll start off with Denise Barton, followed by Ann Bowman Hoover, and then Zena Josephs, Nikki Koloff, and Jala Mamata. And if people could line up against the far wall over there and be ready to speak, it would be most appreciated. Welcome, Ms. Barton.
And good evening. Let's start with item 3D, upgrade to the pier. I truly wonder how the city can say the project site is not located in a sensitive environment to circumvent the CEQA process. By the rationalization, neither the beach or the ocean, which are near the site, in fact. I find it very interesting that residents who live near the site do not seem to be taken into consideration either, considering the overnight hours planned for this project. So also considering by the description, it sounds like an extensive project that will include heavy machinery and lots of noise. And you don't think that it will have a negative effect on residents in the area of the site? I also must begin to question why downtown Santa Monica gets so many extra taxpayer funds when the organization starts with a multi-million-dollar tax base every year, this time for wayfinding. In addition, if downtown Santa Monica Inc. didn't get so many freebies from the city, Might it cut cost increases in other places for the residents? Just asking. And finally, item 3K. I would almost swear this project came before you and was found to have many problems with the wastewater cleaning due to not being able to get all the diseases out of the water. Yet here it is again. Although downtown smells frequently like pee, by this proposal you don't find it a concern, which is why I guess no one should be surprised that you wanted to put two of these storage tanks in Virginia Park on top of a landfill. So here, let's just say the bottom of a tank has a leak, with the contaminants from the landfill getting into the water and contaminating the water. You're not cleaning for contamination. I ask only because of Susan Klein's slow response to the methane pump for the landfill not working for over a month while I was at Mountain View Trailer Park. And of course, Rick Cole needs more senior staff. How many is that now? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hoover, you're up next. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. For the record, my name is Ann Hoover, and I'm a resident. I currently oppose item 3K for lack of notice, lack of transparency, potential cost to taxpayers, and lack of an explanation of how the SWIP will impact other pending projects at the Civic Center, including the Civic Auditorium and the Civic Center field. Particularly, I would like to see information on how specifically this project will help the city achieve water self-sufficiency and what parties, for instance, any private commercial entities, potentially will benefit. Additionally, I would like to see, rather than the photograph provided with the staff report, a drawing of the underground footprint of the SWIP and its various elements. Particularly, I would like information on whether or not placement and inclusion of the SWIP will impact or preclude any future underground parking that might be built at the Civic Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Josephs?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm also speaking on 3K. We have 8 board members in Friends of Sunset Park right now, and so we can't always keep up with reading every agenda item and report for City Council, Planning, Housing, Airport Commission, City Audit Committee, Urban Task Force, etc. And as a result, I was somewhat startled to see a $56 million item in the consent agenda tonight. When I read further, I saw that the total estimated cost is $69 million with a $13 million match from the city. Because I've volunteered with the school district's Visual and Performing Arts District Advisory Committee since 1997, one of the problems that's never been solved is the Samuel High Marching Band sharing the football field with half a dozen sports teams. So I've attended the council hearings about the Civic Center sports field and whether or not to have underground parking. Perhaps the water infrastructure project at the Civic parking lot was mentioned by staff at those hearings, but I don't remember hearing about it, and I feel that we've been left a bit in the dark about any possible interaction between this project and any other projects at the Civic Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Koloff?
Good evening. Nikki Kolhoff, Santa Monica resident. Also speaking to item 3K. This needs to be removed from the consent calendar because there is no discussion whatsoever about the physical project itself. The staff needs to present a full report on how this project impacts the physical site, the remaining development at the Civic Center, and both above and below ground parking options. While I support water efficiency, this project appears to be inconsistent with the Civic Center specific plan, its remaining projects, and parking needs. Given all of the attention and public interest on the Civic Center right now, it would be extremely inappropriate and a breach of public trust to approve of a major physical change to the Civic Center without public notice, input, or scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker, welcome.
Good evening. Joale Mamita, Santa Monica resident. I'm also talking about consent calendar item SWIP 3K. I think that this item shouldn't be in consent calendar, but in regular item agenda, and I oppose this item because of lack of public notice, public discussion, high price, and also not being clear the scope of the work. Since we don't know whether or not this SWIP can impact the underground parking for both auditorium, civic field, and or a early childhood lab school or CBS. We would like to get more clarification of all of this use of the land in public in our public land civic field before this goes to consent calendar. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. That concludes the public comment. The consent calendar is before us. Does any council member wish to pull any items for discussion? And remind everyone that staff has requested that we pull 3E.
I'd like to pull 3K.
All right. Anyone else? In that case, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the remainder of the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
All right. So the motion by McEwen, seconded by O'Day, is to approve all items on the consent calendar with the exception of 3E and 3K. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Hemmerich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes, so that passes unanimously of all 7 of us here.
No,
Okay.
read 3K.
Yeah, would you read 3K?
Authorization for the city manager to accept a funding agreement from the State Water Resources Control Board Clean Water State Revolving Fund Program for the State Sustainable Water Infrastructure Project SWIP. An authorization to negotiate and execute an agreement with the MWH Static Consulting to serve as the owner's engineer for the SWIP project.
Councilmember, did you want to have a staff report on that, or did you just have something to say on it, or what's your pleasure?
Well, I have some questions. I've been following this project for a long time. And excuse me, Pam, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. And my question is about the tank underneath the parking lot. So when I first started following it, there was the tank was below Memorial Park, and I want to know more about how the tank under the Civic Center parking lot will accommodate the sort of various plans for the parking lot, so that we have some flexibility in what we do at the Civic Center.
Good evening, Tom Watson, Water Resources. We presented, I think, 3 times to council on this project. It's always had 2 tanks. There's a 3 million gallon tank underneath Memorial Park, and there's a 1.5 million gallon tank under the Civic Center parking lot. The tank and the recycle plant are specifically sited in order to not impact parking, not impact any potential surface use, including a field or any underground parking plans that the city has. The 2 tanks that we're talking about will harvest stormwater. They help the city meet its enhanced watershed management plan requirements with the State Water Board. And the way the tanks would work is they would harvest stormwater, and then after they harvest it, the water would be fed into the recycle plant for treatment and reuse.
Yeah, so I've been following it. I do understand the mechanics of what it's meant to do. My question is, what is it about the way that the tank is constructed underneath the Civic Center that will allow us the flexibility to have a field or parking or other things in the absence of a more refined Civic Center plan?
Because we've been working in close consultation with our colleagues in planning, and in fact the site was purposely sited where it is now in order to accommodate all those other plans that are planned for the Civic Center.
So is it that it's enough below the surface? Is
It's the top of the tank will be a minimum of like 10 feet below the surface. So on top of the area that we're looking at will be preserved as parking in that one corner. We're kind of up in the corner near the chain reaction sculpture. So we're way up in the corner. We're not near any of the field or any of that other stuff that's planned for the Civic Center parking lot.
So what you're saying is it's located in a different area so that if we wanted to do below ground parking, we would still be able to do it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And on that note, I'll move 3K.
And I'll second it, and note for the record that actually we have discussed this SWIP multiple times at council hearings, and there was actually a fairly comprehensive report on when we looked at the possibility of the playing field at the Civic Center about how the SWIP would not actually interfere with that possible playing field. So I feel that we've actually covered our due diligence on public transparency on this issue, and all we're doing tonight is authorizing the manager to accept this funding from the state to undertake this project. And there's really nothing else to it than that. So it's moved by Himmelrich, seconded by Winter, and can we have a roll call vote? It's a lot of money.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes, so that passes unanimously, and we will then conclude with the consent calendar and move on to the next item on the agenda, please.
Item 7A is adoption of an emergency interim ordinance to authorize the issuance of additional temporary use permits for temporary sidewalk sales undertaken in conjunction with the city public street event by business improvement districts in areas and businesses located within a 750-foot radius of the city event, and waiving the filing fee for temporary use permits that will be exercised during the city public street event by these entities. And you have 6 requests to speak.
All right. And we have a staff report. Welcome.
Thank you. Jingyo, Planning Manager. This emergency interim ordinance is here before you tonight in relation to the Coast event scheduled to take place on October the 1st. This is the second time that the city has held this open streets event. As part of the event, many streets will be closed, including Main Street, Colorado, and Ocean Avenue, and it will impact businesses located along this route. The city would like to maximize participation of businesses affected by the street closure in the event. In addition, the zoning ordinance at this point in time has a cap of issuance of TUPs for special events for 4 times a year, with a limit of 2 sidewalk sales a year for business improvement districts. City-produced events at the time that the zoning ordinance was adopted were not anticipated to accommodate that, and we did not want to penalize our business improvement districts for participating in COAST by using up one of their TUPs. So therefore, this ordinance would allow businesses within 750 feet of the event to participate in COAST by waiving one time the TUP that would be required for their participation, and also waive the $1,500 filing fee for the TUP. So with that, staff recommends approval of the ordinance.
So I have a question. Why in the zoning ordinance did we decide to allow only 2 of these sidewalk sales per year as opposed to, say, 4, and say that, you could do 1 per season or something like that?
It's been the subject of some internal debate, but I think some of the guess was perhaps it was like 1 per season, spring, summer, fall, winter, and then you could group it together. So, but that actually is on our list of changes that we're going to bring forward, given some of the challenges that's presented for community events.
All right, great to hear. Seeing no one else in the queue, we'll turn to the public input. We'll start with Denise Barton for 1 minute, followed by Zoe Montagnier, who's having time donated by Marianne LaGuardia. She's here, so Ms. Montagnier will have 4 minutes. Welcome, Ms. Barton.
Good evening. Another item, try to make transportation and parking hard for people coming to events like COAST. Here, my first question would be, can you make parking inaccessible in this fashion with reducing access to the beach? Might it just violate something with the Coastal Commission regarding parking availability? Although everyone can look at this action, like the pier upgrades, as friendly to businesses and not to residents. And something else to think about is if people are leaving downtown to go elsewhere already because they can't find parking, or don't come here at all because it's already happening. By this action, you seem to want to push more people away from the city by trying to control their freedom of choice to use their cars. I see it as being inconvenient to residents downtown and shooting yourself in the foot. Thank you.
I don't see Ms. Montagnier, so I'm going to call a few more names: Cynthia Anderson Barkin, Barbara Nazario, and Sophia Nazario. are any of those people in this room and ready to speak? Ms. Montaigne, you better hurry. Time is here.
So sorry.
Sorry, Ms. Montaigne, followed by Cynthia Anderson Barkin, Barbara Nazario, and what?
Hi, good evening.
Really?
Several months ago, when our country changed, I remember Councilman Kevin McKeon putting a safety pin in his lapel in symbolism and solidarity of immigrants in our city. And later we had an ordinance and a regulation for embracing diversity. And we have this event coming to the city, and you're going to hear from two of the churro sisters that have been coming to Santa Monica for 2 years, or 1 year, to sell churros, and who have been fined. And we would like to support them, as this is a city of well-being and a city of compassion, to be included in the festival. You know, this is a country that works through democracy, and democracy, everybody participates. And I think this is a wonderful time to embrace our diversity, embrace our resolution, and I have the courage to stand alone in this issue. But more than anything is because it creates the affirmation in practice. One thing is to affirm diversity and to affirm compassion, and another thing is to practice it. And by including the churro ladies that have been selling, and one of the police officers told us that he knows them because he has seen them through the months and here selling, but he has never bought one, that we include them in our city. So more than anything is, I don't want them to hustle for worthiness. They want to be legalized and they want to be invited. And if you are indeed creating this permit for businesses, we would like to extend the same amount of permits that you are including for businesses to include the ladies. So they're going to be speaking in Spanish and I will be translating in English. And thank you so much for considering this.
Do you have some questions for her, or I'll go? So my name is Cynthia Anderson Barker. I'm a civil rights attorney, and for the past 2-3 years, the Lawyers Guild, and we've been running a free legal clinic for street vendors in the city of LA. But recently, we've had street vendors come to us, referred by Chirla from the city of Santa Monica. So we have a number of proposals. We've been talking to your city attorney, your brand new city attorney, and your city manager about the form of some of the issues around these administrative citations the vendors have here. Each of these women has a $575 administrative citation for selling churros for $1. And so just as we're doing in the city of LA, where we'd like the city of Santa Monica to consider an ordinance that would definitely mitigate the hardship of these administrative citations by giving folks an ability to pay, by reducing the fine, by a community service option. Obviously, ideally, we would like legalization for street vendors in the city of Santa Monica. And we've been working closely with Public Counsel. We've got some great draft model ordinances, and we're happy to continue to work with you.
Ms. Anderson Barker,
Yes,
I'm hoping
yes.
you're going to artfully tie this to the
I'm
agenda
gonna-
item that's
Yes.
before us.
And
Thank you.
so here, we're here today because we have a great contrast. We understand your city is giving some free permits to local businesses to sell on the streets, and we're hoping you'll do the same for the street vendors. Thank you. Any questions? I would love to meet with some of you individually. I've already met with Councilman Vasquez. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And Barbara Nazario, welcome.
Hablas aquí y yo te traduzco.
Buenas noches, yo vengo aquí por el ticket que me han dado que es de $575, pero
I'm here because I came would like to be legal because I got a ticket for $575.
No es justo, es mucho dinero para mí y yo no gano esa cantidad. Lo único que gano es poquito al día.
I make very little money during the day, $70 per day approximately, and I would like to participate in the event that you are hosting in October.
Pues yo quisiera tener un permiso a ver si puedo ser parte de aquí de la ciudad de Santa Mónica, si no me pueden dar un permiso para venir a vender mis churros aquí.
I would like a permit from the city of Santa Monica to come and sell churros here in the city and be part of the economy.
Pues, eso es lo que yo quisiera, tener un permiso para que así pueda yo vender y no me den el ticket del que me ha tocado de 575.
Okay, you just said, thank you.
Thank you. And now Sofia Nazario.
Buenas noches. Es que a mí me han dado ticket de 575 por vender churros. Yo quisiera que si no hay manera de rebajarlo.
I've also been ticketed in the city of Santa Monica for $575 for selling churros, and I would like to come to sell legally. And that's all.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, council members, the matter is before us for any questions of staff or discussion or motions.
I move we adopt the emergency ordinance.
All right, motion to adopt the ordinance by Councilmember McEwen, second by Councilmember O'Connor. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter.
Yes, so that passes unanimously. Could we move on to item 7B, please?
Item 7B is introduction for first reading of an ordinance setting forth an expedited and streamlined permitting process for electric vehicle charging stations as required by Government Code Section 65850.7, and you have one request to speak.
Welcome, Mr. Vyas.
Mr. Mayor, I tend to recuse myself on questions related to electric vehicle charging, as that's the business that I'm in, although this item has nothing to do directly with my business. It is just for perception's sake. Thank you.
Don't go too far.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Salvador Vyas. I am the Assistant Director for Planning and Community Development. Government Code Section 65850.7 requires local jurisdictions to adopt an ordinance to create an expedited permitting process for electric vehicle charging stations. The proposed ordinance codifies our compliance with state law. The intent of the law is to promote and encourage the use of electric vehicle charging stations and to create consistent statewide standards. The city has maintained an expedited permitting process for a number of years and waives all permitting fees. Of the 5 permits issued in 2017, this calendar year, all were issued over the counter in one day. What is new with this ordinance is that applicants will now be required to include the state mandated checklist, which will be incorporated into our existing permitting and inspection procedures. Staff recommends adoption of the ordinance. That concludes my presentation, and I am available for questions.
Any questions? I see none. Then we have one request to speak from Denise Barton for 1 minute. Is Ms. Barton here? All right, and then we'll move on to deliberations. Councilmember McEwen.
Well, I have a question first for staff. Do we still have scheduled at our next meeting a larger discussion of EV policy? Is that still set for next or an upcoming meeting?
It is upcoming shortly. I don't think it's next meeting.
Well, I just want to let people know this is not the full extent of our concern with EV charging, and that we will be visiting the issue soon, but that this is a step we can take tonight, so I move the staff recommendation.
All right, so by McEwen and seconded by Himmerich for introduced for first reading this ordinance about EV permitting streamlining. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Kuhn?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
And Mayor Winter?
Yes. And while the clerk calls the 13 items, maybe someone could flag down Councilmember O'Day.
Item 13A is the annual appointments to the boards and commissions. And the first one, you have no request to speak on this one.
All right, and we will filibuster because it's our tradition to make these appointments with a full body. So I'll remind everybody that our Coast event is coming up on Sunday, October 1st from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and we'll have full closure of the streets from the very south end of Main Street up along Ocean Avenue. And I invite everybody to come out and enjoy this second of time we've had this festive event to take advantage of our public streets and engage one another from the community. And now we have Councilmember O'Day, and I can stop filibustering. So, Councilmember's first appointment before us is to the Architectural Review Board. My recollection is there one incumbent desiring reappointment.
Yes, I would nominate Patrick Ty.
We don't second on these occasions, but yes, as long as you push a button to speak.
I move by acclamation.
Seeing no objection, all those in favor of reappointing Patrick Ty, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations, Mr. Ty is reappointed to the ARB. We have 2 vacancies on the Disabilities Commission. One position must be filled by a person with self-identified disabilities, and we have no incumbents seeking reappointment. So we have 2 newcomers to appoint.
So we have the two that meet the criteria for the disability are Dee Capelli and Lori Ringer.
All right, let's take them one at a time. How about for the first spot? Any nominations?
I'll nominate Lori Ringer.
Any other nominations? And let's do it by acclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations to Ms. Ringer. And then let's take the second seat up. Any nominations for the
I
second?
nominate Dee Capelli.
I nominate Bruce Works.
All right, so we have Ms. Capelli and Mr. Works, so we will actually vote on this one.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Works.
Councilmember O'Day?
Works.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Works.
Councilmember Himmerich?
Capelli.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Capelli.
Councilmember Kuhn?
Capelli.
And Mayor Winter?
Capelli. So Ms. Capelli is appointed to the Disabilities Commission.
I'd like to change my vote to Ms. Capelli.
By acclamation.
Yeah, I'll change mine as well. So, we
So
can
Ms.
do it by
Capelli is
acclamation.
unanimously appointed to this Disabilities Commission. And we'll now move on to probably the least controversial, which is the Personnel Board, because my recollection, we have one incumbent who desires to be reappointed and no other applicants. So I'm just going to run out and say I nominate Bud Pell.
You're out there on a limb, aren't you?
Acclamation. By acclamation.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So congratulations to Mr. Pell. He's reappointed. Can the clerk call item 13B, please?
Item 13B is appointment to one unscheduled vacancy on the Task Force on the Environment, and you do have one request to speak. It's Andrew Hoyer for 2 minutes.
Is Mr. Hoyer here?
I don't see him, and I haven't seen him tonight.
Well, we probably, most people expected us to get to this at 1 in the morning, so.
I think we can guess what side of the issue he is on this.
Yes.
I think we got a letter from him.
We did get an email from him. So anyway, with that, having no public input available to us, we'll entertain nominations for.
Can I stop you for a second? I needed to note on this one that William Carelli, is that his name? He's currently on the Clean Beaches, and if you guys decide to appoint him, he'll require a supermajority of vote. And if not, he said he would resign from the Clean Beaches. So just throwing that out there.
There's Mr. Hoyer.
Oh,
Well, Mr. Hoyer, you better scramble. The clock is ticking.
David Martin was distracting me. Good evening. My name is Andrew Hoyer, and I am the Vice President and Government Affairs Officer for Santa Monica Mid-City Neighbors. I didn't really say to you, but I did want to reiterate that though I might not be the most, I think I would be a good addition based on my experience interacting with the seven of you over the last several years, and also with the Planning Commission and my activities and involvements in city government at all levels. Interestingly, the only meeting of the task force that I've been able to attend was on the net zero water policy that was recently implemented. So it was interesting to see how it started out and what it became, and I'd like to be more involved in that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so council members, the matter is before us. We'll entertain nominations.
Well, Mayor, the resignation of William Selby was particularly sad to me because of his long service, and for 10 years I was the liaison to this task force for the City Council. It's an unusual advisory body to the City Council in that it's composed of scientists and academics with particular expertise, and I hated to lose that Santa Monica College connection. But I note that one of the applicants is the current head of the Santa Monica College Center for Environmental and Urban Studies, so I will nominate David Bagdasarian.
And I'll nominate Carter Rubin.
And I'll nominate Andrew Hoyer.
All right. So we will have a vote on that because the clerk called.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the names again.
So it was
Councilmember McCune,
David Bagdasarian,
and Carter Rubin and Andrew Hoyer.
okay. Councilmember O'Connor,
Rubin.
Councilmember O'Day,
Bagdasarian.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Rubin.
Councilmember Himmelrich,
Hoyer.
Councilmember Vasquez,
Bagdasarian.
Councilmember McCune,
Bagdasarian.
And I'll change my vote to Bagdasarian.
Do I get a vote
and
first?
Mayor Winter.
Can I change it first?
And Mayor Winter.
I will vote for Bagdasarian. So.
And I changed my vote to Bagdasarian.
And I'll change mine as well, so it can be by acclamation.
Okay, so after that, Mr. Bagdasarian is appointed unanimously to the Task Force on the Environment. Can we go on to item 13C, please?
Item 13C is recommendation to accept Anthony Perez's resignation from the Social Services Commission and authorize the city clerk to publish the vacancy. And you have no request to speak.
Move we accept with regrets.
I think we can do that by acclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. And on to 13D.
Item 13D is request of Mayor Winter that the council allocate discretionary funds to the Houston relief effort via the Greater Houston Community Foundation at www.ghcf.org, per the request of the Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner in a letter to the members of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and you have no request to speak.
So clearly I should speak to this since I'm the one to put it on the agenda. I get regular, in fact, daily emails from the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and when Hurricane Harvey hit Houston, it was very clear in the aftermath that there's going to be a very prolonged and substantial relief effort involved in helping that city recover, particularly since so many of the property owners there did not have the flood insurance, and since often insurance will cover damage by wind, but this was just a substantial and prolonged rainfall, that the mayors around the country were chipping in to help the best that they could. And I was moved by the mayors around the country who are helping out. Their cities are helping on this relief effort, so I had hoped that we might be able to do the same from our discretionary funds. I did not want to put a specific dollar amount on the agenda item because I wanted to hear what people thought about the notion before we even delved into whether or not we gave a dollar amount. So I welcome my colleagues' feedback on the issue. Councilmember McKeown.
Well, it is very difficult to consider this without a dollar amount, and I understand getting the letters from the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Several others of us have been in that position, and it's always easy to be sympathetic to our fellow cities. But given that we've, since you first put this on the agenda, seen a second hurricane go roaring through American cities, I then wonder about Key West and Fort Myers and Tampa and Naples, Puerto Rico. So I don't know how many of these things we can do for other places at a time when we have things I would like to see us put council money toward here at home. With the cancellation of DACA, we have perhaps as many as 1,000 undocumented students at SMC alone, and they're under pressure to apply for a 2-year renewal by October 5th to be able to stay in this country. And that costs something like $500 for the application. And we can't do it tonight because it's not on the agenda, but I'll signal my intention to visit this at our next meeting, that we should look into how many of those are Santa Monica residents and what we can do as a council to help defray the cost of their applying so they can stay in our community for another 2 years. With all the needs that are before us, I'm very sympathetic to Houston and Puerto Rico and Naples and Tampa and Fort Myers. But until you hang a dollar figure on it, I really can't tell you what's practical for the city to do.
Well, I would say I saw that, for instance, Miami gave, I forget how much, but I was initially thinking of something on the order of $20,000, so it was significant. But I have to say that then since Irma hit, I thought, well, maybe we ought to cut that in half. And so I was thinking about $10,000. But I welcome thoughts from my colleagues. Councilmember Himmerich.
Well, so apart from the council, I've been thinking about what I personally will be doing for all of these cities, because I always do in these crises. You know, it's hard to know. We're towards the end of the year. We won't be seeing certainly many more, well, although we're at the beginning of our fiscal year, but I think that $10,000 isn't an unreasonable amount. And I do have a question. I thought the DACA application fee was $750.
Well, I got an email today saying it was $500. We'll certainly we'll figure that out.
$500, but okay, so that would be, even if we funded everybody, it would be $50,000.
And I doubt very seriously we would have to fund everybody.
But regardless, okay,
and
so
if it's 1,000, it's not 50,000. It's 1,000 times 500.
All right, we probably ought to stay on the agenda.
Right.
So it's 500,000.
500,000, right.
It's a little bit beyond what we're talking about.
Yes, okay. So, well, we're talking about how much to give, and we have to think about what our future obligations are going to be too. No, so I will move approval of this for $10,000.
Councilmember Davis.
Well, I just wanted to hark back to the beginning of the meeting where we heard from Ms. Rusk and about being committed to well-being, and how one of the key factors of well-being is knowing your neighbors and having their back. And it just seems to me that this is an opportunity to have someone's back in a time of great need. And I think the $10,000 amount is perfectly appropriate. It may be that it might be appropriate to allocate some more in the case of Florida. We'll see. But it just seems to me that cities in this current political environment feel a kind of bond that we're in this together, and this is one of the opportunities to sort of put our money where our heart is.
Councilmember McKim.
I'll be supporting the motion, and as I said at the outset, I'm very sympathetic to the situation. But I just want to remind us that this is not the council's money, it is public money. So before I vote, I would ask that there be some articulation of how this is a benefit to the city of Santa Monica. And it may seem obvious, but I think it needs to be on the record before we vote for the money.
Well, I think I can articulate. I think it's very clear from engagement with mayors ever since the national election that there's a host of issues that we're feeling that we're working on our own without the help of DC, whether it's climate change or immigration or infrastructure improvements, et cetera. And I think mayors, despite what their demographic is, whether they're largely Republican or largely Democratic, have recognized that we need to all bond together for a common agenda, that the large proportion of the gross domestic product is generated within cities, and that we have these shared interests that are not shared right now by the current administration in DC. And I think beyond that, frankly, we would hope that if we should ever have, and we hope we don't, but a natural disaster of a similar magnitude here, that cities across the country would want to reach out and lend us a helping hand.
Thank you. That just needed to be on the record.
Councilmember O'Connor.
Right, and I was just going to add, there have been recent articles about I'm just reminding us that we live in a seismically active zone, and it's just a matter of time before there's an earthquake. We don't know what kind of impacts that would have, but it could be devastating on many levels to our region, and we probably would be looking to others to help us too.
Councilmember Vasquez.
Recover.
I will be supporting the motion, but I just hope that we all think about in the future, because this may come back to us from the other neighboring states as they move forward with some of their disasters as well.
Well, we hope they don't have disasters, but I hear your point. All right, so the motion, which I believe was by Councilmember Himmelrich and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Davis, is to allocate $10,000 to the Houston Relief Fund that's designated in the agenda item. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
Mayor Winter?
Yes, so that passes unanimously, and that brings us to item 14. Could the clerk call that, please?
14, public input. Public comment is permitted only on items not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. State law prohibits the City Council from taking any action on items not listed on the agenda, including issues raised under this agenda item, and you have 11 requests to speak.
All right, and the first speaker is Tori Rhodes, and you're having time donated by Ramon Barba. There you go, very good. Welcome, Ms. Rhodes, and then let me just call a few more names. Following Ms. Rhodes would be Ken Johnson, LaTanya Drake, Denise Barton, and Zena Josephs. Welcome.
Too late.
Yeah, it's got to be on the file with the chip. That's it.
Good evening, honored council members. My name is Tori Rhodes, and to introduce myself, I've been an employee of the City of Santa Monica, responsible for the electronic communications equipment of our fleet's radio, head sign, video surveillance, and fare collection equipment. I come here today to speak regarding this troubling trend that I've observed, where it seems the city has been less willing to offer fair cost of living increases to my coworkers and I, while at the same time giving ever-increasing expansive pay raises to our city top executives far above what everyone else in our city is receiving. I'm going to go ahead and show a slide. This is a slide showing some of our executive salary over the past 4 or 5 years. You could see that there are some significant increases from year to year, sometimes over $10,000. And I know for certain that not all of that is COLA involved. These were collected from the Transparent California, publicly available information to anybody. Just scrolling through here. So as I understand it, a lot of the other bargaining units have accepted a 1.5 or a 1.7 COLA. And that's what I'm trying to address today. Sorry. So I come here today after having done my research, and I found that what the city is currently offering many bargaining units is less than 2% annual cost of living increases, while everywhere I've looked in Southern California, these cities are offering 2% or more. So I'll scroll through some of these cities: Long Beach, Anaheim, Culver City. I list my sources here: Pasadena, Redondo Beach, Glendale, Thousand Oaks. The city used to pride itself in being a leader in fair but equitable compensation, and for some reason we are falling behind. I know a lot of these cities used to look to us to see what we're offering our employees, and now it seems like for some reason we're less than everyone else. I find this trend shameful, and I beg the City Council to consider what message it sends to the workers who make the city run so efficiently and what it will send to potential new hires later on, and whether we will be able to attract the best and brightest in years to come if we continue down this path of offering such low compensation. I bring with me a few of my coworkers who would also like to share their concerns. I hope you will take some time to reflect on whether what is being offered is fair or comparable to what you are offering the highest paid execs with regards to annual increases. I understand and respect that you all have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that you are fiscally responsible with public funds. However, what is being offered is in fact nothing short than expecting your workers to accept a loss of income when considering the growing expense to live and work in Southern California, and these cuts should not be done on the backs of the lowest paid employees alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken Johnson and then LaTanya Drake.
In the effort of saving time, he's basically said everything I wanted to say, so I'm going to forfeit my time.
All right, thank you. LaTanya Drake. All right, thank you. Ms. Barton, followed by Ms. Josephs, and then followed by Nikki Koloff.
Good evening. Let's begin where we left off last time, where I received a program violation warning notice and directive and requested an administrative hearing, even though the people making the judgment or decision were the people doing it to me. But alas, Barbara Collins decided I didn't deserve an administrative hearing, even though at the bottom of the document it plainly states, if you disagree with this violation, you have the right to an appeal process. Although not here in Santa Monica, where Barbara Collins is allowed to deny the appeal process, and I understand that I'm not the only one she's done this to either. It's quite similar, though, to the document stating about accommodating the disabled, where if it isn't obviously seen, it doesn't exist, especially regarding stress-related disabilities. The letter from Barbara Collins also continues to insist that I continue putting everything in writing, which is time-consuming due to my physical disability. But again, the city obviously thinks it's okay to discriminate against the disabled and seniors. Just look at the city's action of eliminating accommodations for seniors and the disabled, but not children at city council meetings. Next, on August 24th, I received a packet for information disclosure certification application with a bunch of forms to fill out, along with a scheduled appointment, which will be interesting considering the housing authorities clearly stated it wants everything in writing, as I do at this point. Also included in the packet was an investigation protocol sheet stating that undisclosed sources of information is causing my income, assets, and household composition to be disclosed. But further down it says I'm not being accused of fraud. But it does clearly state that I'm subject to unannounced home visits and or surveillance. The assault on me by the city continues. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Josephs?
Thank you. I received a letter from the Coastal Commission right before Labor Day weekend. It was a notice that the city's permit application for the City Services Building would be on the September 14th Coastal Commission consent agenda in Cambria, which it's not clear why I received the notice and others didn't. Comments were supposed to be submitted a week before the meeting. That would have been September 7th. But to see the actual application and documents, I would have had to drive to Long Beach and review the documents at the counter because those documents and the staff reports were not posted online. Today, I received an email from the Coastal Commission staff in Long Beach that the City Services Building and Santa Monica College's permit application for the Early Childhood Lab School, also here in the Civic Center, will be heard in Chula Vista. That's only a 3-hour drive from my house. Meanwhile, the Commission staff revealed that the city never submitted to the Coastal Commission the Civic Center specific plan. It was adopted in 2005. So the Commission is either unaware or cannot consider the possible future parking needs of the Civic Auditorium and the sports field. This feels like piecemeal planning. It's what you're forcing the Coastal Commission to do. I would request that these, for the sake of transparency, that these Coastal Commission permit applications from the city be revealed to the public when they're submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Koloff, excuse me, hold on while I call a few more names to come after you. Ann Hoover, Jalamita, Valerie Griffin, Marianne LaGuardia and Art Casillas. Welcome.
Hi, Nikki Kohlhoff, Santa Monica resident. Speaking about the recent events that have transpired at the Coastal Commission. First, it's inexcusable for the city to have missed statutory deadlines, but beyond that, it's a betrayal of the public trust to have made these submissions with no notice, none of the files available to the public, asking for them to be consent items instead of a hearing, and with no way of the public to actually review the file prior to the hearing date. We couldn't even get a copy of it. They can't produce it in time. That's not how our democracy is supposed to work, and that's not you working for us. Council has stated on the dais again and again and again that they support the field. Yet the actions taken by staff in submitting the ECEC and CSB to the Coastal Commission piecemeal have the result of killing the field. The Coastal Commission has told us that there are not enough parking spots left to build the field once these two are approved, and any additional project requires additional parking. Worse than this, based on the timing of the applications, the city had to have known this when you rejected the offer of $50 million to build the underground parking from the school district in June. Given that sending these two projects to the Coastal Commission in this matter do kill the field, if you truly want the field, you will direct staff to pull the applications and submit them as a whole at a later date with a comprehensive plan with the rest of the Civic Center items, including the CSB, the ECEC, the field, the auditorium, and now the SWIP. We need to know that parking demands for these projects are not mitigated by killing other elements of the plan, as the Coastal Commission is doing with your applications now. If you continue as is, then your actions show you never intended to build the field, and you have sided with staff and SMC excess over the residents whom you were elected to represent. Thank you.
Hi, Ann Hoover. I just want to build on what Zena and Nikki have already said. We really don't want to see the field set up to fail, and that's where it appears to stand right now. We'd be happy to be proven wrong. I'd like to urge you, because parking really does seem to be the issue, despite discussions to the contrary, I'd like to urge you to direct staff to reopen discussions with the school district about putting the permanent field and the permanent parking in. Board votes to add additional parking during phases 1 and 2 of their Samuel High Campus Plan rebuild. We feel pretty confident that they would still want to come back to the table and talk with you all. And we don't want these projects to move any further down the road, because Samuel High is going to plan more, and it will be less and less likely that they would want to get together on this. Why should you direct the reopening of discussions? Because the permanent solution, if you're truly serious about putting a field there, which I trust still that you are, is the most simple, elegant, logical, least expensive for the city, fairest, and most equitable solution given all of the competing interests at the Civic Center space. Finally, I just have to say, I am still disappointed that the permanent solution was bypassed in June, particularly because the justification was because we can't build more parking in a world where we don't want people to drive. But it is about parking. People are going to drive for a long time. And hopefully we can drive more of Terry's vehicles and not pollute the planet. So that solution or that justification for me has felt a little hypocritical in light of what we seem to have seen given staff's actions. We're not going to build parking, and yet we're going to gobble up all the available parking there now for pet projects. So we want to trust you to do the field. Thank you.
Charlie Mamita, Santa Monica resident again. In addition to what Ms. Joseph and Ms. Hoover and Nikki talk about the Coastal Commission issues, I also want to add that we want the report for parking study not only for early childhood lab school and city service building. At the same time, for auditorium and field, we want to make sure that there would be sufficient parking space for all 4 projects at the same time. Also, we want a multi-purpose sport field with high community demand and interest to be prioritized for Coastal Commission and to be considered at the same with the same package with ECLS and CSB. City Council approved and promised to Santa Monica community, children, adults, to expedite this project for Civic Field, and we would like to see that happen. We need the date for Civic Field for the Coastal Commission hearing, and we need also the date for construction at the same time for ES Early Childhood Lab Service, Lab School, and City Service Building, all at the same time with Coastal Commission. So please just stay with your promise and make this happen as soon as possible. We really appreciate that, and we're hoping that this happens. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Griffin?
We've all seen the August 7th article in the Daily Press about the Huntley's actions with regard to political contributions and the FPPC's fine. We've all heard the full-throated outrage from our leaders and public denunciation by the Transparency Project. We've all read the blistering editorials in our local newspapers. We've seen people picketing the Huntley with signs expressing disgust for these actions. We haven't. Oh, right. Nobody reacted to this article. Well, guess what, folks? The Huntley tried to buy our government. We can't let them get away with it. As you know, I'm not an attorney. It's my understanding that the FPPC can only investigate and punish direct election violations and levy fines. There may well be many related violations of civil and criminal law. Some other government entity needs to deal with possible fraud, conspiracy, and other actions. It sounds like there was a conspiracy. Does it rise to the standard of RICO? There were attorneys involved in this. If they were guilty of crimes, can they be disbarred? The Santa Monica City Attorney should be called on to investigate these actions and to determine what laws were violated. As necessary, other agencies, including the Los Angeles County District Attorney and California Attorney General, should be brought in. The people who did this need to be punished. Silence is complicity. Inaction is complicity. Do something.
Thank you, Ms. LaGuardia.
Good evening, Marianne LaGuardia, 32-year Santa Monica resident. When Neil Carey and I left these chambers 17 years ago in July, after the council had directed staff to put the field in the plan, a then very senior member of city staff looked at me and said, that field is never going to go there. And we spent the next 17 years proving that. What I learned is you don't need to go out on the pier to the arcade to play whack-a-mole. You can play it right here. Every time you think you've got a leg up on the field, something pops up here or here or here or whatever, and you take your mallet and you knock it down and it pops up somewhere else. 48 hours ago, I learned that the mole had been moved 4 hours away to Cambria and was sitting on a consent calendar about which most of the residents of Santa Monica had no notice. Now, I believe, but I can't say affirmatively, but I do believe the Coastal Commission was persuaded that the city blew its notice requirement. I don't believe that was intentional, but if it wasn't intentional, it was incompetent. We should be paying attention to that. But the notice requirement goes beyond what's required by the statute. This issue has an enormous number of stakeholders. You've had to sit through hours of listening to them and reading their thousands of emails. The fact that these documents, the fact that the applications were being made without reference to the field, the fact that these documents were not made available to the stakeholders to at least review, the fact that we couldn't even get them from the Coastal Commission is really shameful. That's not the way we operate. We pride ourselves on our transparency, and we blew it on this one. I'm tired of playing whack-a-mole. You're tired of listening to me. So if you really want the field, let's do it in a manner that doesn't kick it over for somebody else to kill it, or else man up and say you're just not going to do it. Thank you.
And we will conclude with Mr. Casillas.
Good evening, Art Casillas. Hello, welcome, new City Attorney Elaine Dilge. On item 14 says you don't have to help us. Yet by job description and law of the land, you must warn, prevent, defend, and report to Department of Justice willful endangerment, discrimination, crime. City Council, Police Department, and City Attorney's Office unethically often choose to turn their backs on us as a sworn duty. For about the last 20 years, Jacqueline Seabrooks has been Lieutenant of Gangs and Drugs, Planner and Deployment Officer in charge. Just like today, now Police Chief Jacqueline Seabrooks still deploys police to Pier Promenade in Palisades Park for tourists. My brother and I and my family and child care center next door are suffering from gang and drug sales, parolees, and threats by gunshots, heavy threatening explosives, fireworks, by house fire intimidation, and or death threats. Drug dealers can now be held liable for damages. What about liability City Council who allow and enable them knowingly to willfully endanger us for a long period of time? City Council, Police Department, City Attorney's Office have chosen to knowingly take our property's safety and serenity by allowing and enabling drug sales, heroin, and methamphetamines from rent-controlled apartments across the fence to shut me up. City Manager Rick Cole said he'd help us at first to find out what evidence we have against City. We asked City Manager Cole in Section 8 to move my brother to a safe apartment area in Santa Monica, but Section 8 said, just build a wall. Can we meet City Attorney Dilge? Would you please help us? I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, council members, that concludes the public input. I believe we do have at least one adjournment.
Before we do that, members of the public have heard this before, but need to understand that we cannot take action on matters brought to us on a 14 item, nor can we take action on anything else that was not on the agenda. That happened earlier tonight where somebody asked for something we couldn't do. However, we can ask for information. So I would like to ask staff to provide us with information on the Coastal Commission status of the Civic Center applications, because I don't think I fully understood all the information that was being alluded to in the testimony we heard.
Happy to do so. Just briefly, the Coastal Commission notified us this morning that the previous consent calendar item had been rescheduled as an open item for the next council or commission meeting, which is in October. That applies both to the lab school at the college and to our project, and in fact to all of the Los Angeles region projects that were on the consent calendar. They're all being rescheduled for next month.
And I know they meet all over the state. Do we know where that next meeting will be?
One of the speakers correctly identified it as Chula Vista.
Okay.
There was no noticing a requirement from what I understand that was a problem. There was some letters generated from our community that caused them to, that generally speaking, consent calendar items are ones where there is no debate or discussion. And the receipt of those letters caused them to reschedule the items just so there would be an open hearing. And we respect that decision. And we will respond to some of the concerns raised tonight and raised in those letters. I can personally reiterate that we see no conflict between the field and these projects. And we will work closely with the Coastal Commission to ensure that all of the projects that have been approved by the council proceed.
Thank you for that information.
Councilmember Laudet.
Similarly, we had testimony regarding the Huntley Hotel and the FPPC violations. I'm particularly interested to know that to have some information come back from staff to make sure that we've explored thoroughly what the implications are related to what we've learned as a result of the FPPC investigation and the stipulation that was entered. We know the FPPC has a very important role in protecting our elections, and particularly focused on transparency and accountability in elections statewide. But we do have a role here at the city to safeguard our own elections, and we do have Santa Monica ordinances, including, of course, our Oaks Initiative and reporting requirements that I'm not sure we have directly investigated. So I just do want to ask too that the staff takes a close look at this question, and in particular to safeguard our local institutions that may just not be covered by the FPPC's jurisdiction, and particularly with local knowledge that we may have as to how our particular laws have been may or may not have been implicated here.
Understood. And the one thing I would add is that the matter was broadly reported on in the LA Times and other sources. The Criminal Division of the City Attorney's Office has confirmed that the District Attorney's Office is aware of the matter. We would not go further than that. We would not interfere or request updates on whether there's an investigation, the status of an investigation, but we have confirmed that they're aware.
Councilmember Himmelrich.
So the final matter that we heard comment on tonight was the issue of the food carts, which I understand we're working on, and I understand that in the absence of any agendized item, that this is an issue that we're proactively trying to resolve in order to remove any criminal aspects of these food carts. Among other issues, but I'd like to request that we hear something about that from staff.
Again, happy to do so in more detail. Food vending is legal in the city of Santa Monica. It's approximately $154 license. The difficulty raised this evening was we do not issue licenses for the vending of food. So vending of non-food items is legal, but food items have to have a county license. And in the absence of having a county license, vending food, which can carry serious foodborne illnesses, very rare, but in some cases has actually been deadly. In the absence of that kind of a permit, we give warnings and we cite. And the fine is not actually set by the city of Santa Monica, as I understand it. It's actually set by the county. The $575 fine for not having a county food license is meant to be a substantial deterrent to people vending food that is not licensed by the county. So we are not in a position to waive that in Santa Monica, but we are working on the other aspects to make it easier for people to get county, to comply with the county health and safety regulations. We certainly would like to do that. There are places in Santa Monica where food or any kind of vending is not legal. Those are our beaches, our parks, and the pier. But it is legal on city streets. And of course that makes up the vast majority of the public spaces in our city. That's the status. We'll give you a more in-depth report as an information item.
All right. And now, does anybody have any requests to adjourn in memory of anyone?
I do. Council, I ask that we adjourn tonight in memory of Betty Scheinbaum. Betty died last month at the age of 97. Santa Monica was one of several places Betty lived during her long life, but most of us probably know her from the graciously welcoming home that she shared in Brentwood with her husband, Stanley Scheinbaum, who died a year ago. That home hosted many social justice and political gatherings over many years. Stanley was a bigger-than-life character, and so maybe people didn't quite understand how important Betty was. Betty Scheinbaum was born Betty Warner, the daughter of one of the founders of the Warner Brothers Film Studios. She was a painter and a sculptor. In fact, she had an exhibit at the Tag Gallery here in Santa Monica as recently as last year. When she married Stanley Scheinbaum, Betty's passion for politics came to the fore. Now, Stanley was the chair of the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU in Southern California, among many other progressive political involvements, in which Betty was always his active partner. Betty Scheinbaum is survived by 3 children, 8 grandchildren, 13 great-grandchildren, and any number of social justice and political causes. Speaking on behalf of the entire community, we convey to Betty's family our deepest condolences. Betty Scheinbaum.
Seeing no other adjournments, we will then conclude this meeting, and we'll see everybody back here in 2 weeks for what would likely be a longer meeting. I don't want our new city attorney to get used to this early hour.